Our scripture today is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, and it's verses 9 through 13, and then we skip to verses 18 through 26. I invite you to just listen with open hearts and open minds. As Jesus says, all who have ears to hear, let them hear. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but the sinners." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died. But come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly, a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. And when Jesus came to the leader's house, he saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion. He said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. May the hearing of these words add insight and blessing to your lives. This is a good one. Don't you just feel it? This is a good one. So, first, I want you to know a few things about the first century life in this time, what the culture was like. Systemically, right? Rome is in power. That's the presiding power. Everything is about Rome. But in Israel, or I should say, in Israel, King Herod is the ruler, right? He's appointed and serves really at the will of the emperor. So everything Herod the Great does has to please Rome, right? This is how he builds his power, and his wealth is about pleasing Rome. And how do you please Rome? You pay them. Yeah, it's a lucrative relationship. It's all about money and power, right? So the system is that all the money flows up, right? It flows up from the very lowest up. By design, nobody gets wealthy except the wealthy. You've heard this, right? You've heard this, right? The rich get richer. That's the design. So let me give you an example. So the fishermen, the fishing families, people who fish for a living, they have to pay a tax on every fish they catch. Now, they're going to pay that tax to Herod. Herod's going to collect that tax and take his cut of it and then pass on the rest to Rome, right? That's how it works. It all flows up. But of course, Herod's not going to sit and collect the tax himself, right? He's not going to do that. So he's going to have some cronies. that are going to kind of be in charge of helping him implement and enforce these things. Now, the cronies, they're kind of high up too, so they're getting a big piece of stuff too. They're getting, so really the system is the powerful and those that help them the most get protected, like their family, the cronies. They're gonna get the most out of this deal. And then they have, they open the bidding. There's like a little bidding war. You get to decide, you get to bid for the position to be a toll collector, or as the Gospel of Matthew will say, a tax collector. I just want to be really clear that when we hear in our modern language, we hear tax collector, we think of something different. But Matthew, the tax collector in this story, would be sitting in a toll booth by the lake or the water, right? He's sitting in a little booth, and his job is to, when the fishermen come in, he's going to count those fish, check it out, and he's going to collect the money from them. He's going to collect the money. Now, that position, he's bid for, right? Somebody, they bid for that. Now, who do you think wins the bid? Who gets chosen to be the tax collector? If you're Herod and his cronies, who would you choose to be that person? If you have all these bids, you're going to probably pick the one who's going to make you the most money, right? So tax collectors are not very popular at all because they're really doing this hardcore, cruel work of bilking the most vulnerable and the most hardworking people. And it's not just the fishermen, right? It's in every field, anything, everywhere. Everything is taxed at a rate that is by design to keep the people who are doing the work really poor. Now, I need you to know also that the tax collector doesn't make much money. You don't get rich being a tax collector. I just want you to be aware of this as we think of Matthew, the tax collector. There's no way that role gets you wealthy. Now, it's going to get you a little bit more power and a little bit more money, probably, but you're not going to, because why? Because by design, the money flows up, right? So he collects the money, he takes his little bitty cut. He can't take a big cut because it has to go to the cronies, and it has got to go to Herod, and then it has to go to Rome. There has to be enough to be impressive to Rome, right? You're not going to get rich being a tax collector, but you are going to be really disliked. You are going to be a really disliked person in society. I mean, come on, be honest. Who likes tax collectors in our society? Tax collectors. So there Matthew is. I want you to picture this. There's this guy who's probably really not very well liked. People just pass by his little booth. He's got his little booth set up there by the water, taking in the money. Nobody probably talks to him much. This is my imagination. It's not there, but I imagine nobody really wants to spend much time with this guy. He's not probably invited over to people's homes very often. He's not well liked. He's doing his job. Maybe he has to. Maybe he doesn't have any choice. He's trying to take care of his family too. And in an oppressive system like that, where the money flows up and the rich get richer, and you just can't help. You just begin to kind of turn in, and you just got to take care of your own. You just think that that's the system is by design. You just take care of your own. From the highest to the lowest, you just got to do what you got to do to take care of your own. Got to take care of my family. Got kids. I just got to sit here in this booth and be really unliked. But that's okay, because I got to take care of my own. There he is, just minding his own business, being busy. He's busy. This is important. Pay attention to this. He's busy, doing his job, minding his own business. He could care less By all accounts, we don't get Matthew, the gospel writer Matthew, by all accounts, there's nothing in the gospel that says that Matthew, the tax collector, has any interest in Jesus whatsoever. I meet people like this every day. Whatever. Religion, I'm spiritual, not religious, I don't know, whatever, you can believe it. He's just sitting there doing his job, minding his own business. But Jesus seeks him out. This is really important. This is big. I want you to pay attention to this. Jesus goes right up to him. One of the most unliked people in society, sitting there just busy doing his job, has expressed no interest. The story tells it. I mean, there's nothing in the story that suggests that Matthew hollers out, "Hey, Jesus, did you catch any fish? Because I'm going to tax you." No, he's not even interested. Nothing. There's nothing. But Jesus goes up to him. Jesus goes up to him. Follow me. Jesus goes up to a tax collector sitting in a toll booth collecting taxes for a really unfair, impossible system that is oppressive and awful for most everybody. And this is a person who is perpetuating the system. Jesus goes up to him and calls him as his disciple. Do you get that? He calls him as his disciple. It's not just a little "Hey, how you doing today? Hope you know God loves you." No. He says, "You come follow me." When he says come follow, when Jesus says follow me, he's calling him as his disciple. Just like he called Peter. Just like he called follow me. That's the command, follow me. That's all, follow me. Imperative, follow me. And there's only two answers. There's one of two answers, right? There's yes or no. And this little tax collector that nobody really likes, really an outcast, really. This little guy sitting there perpetuating this horrible system, minding his own business, doing a job that most people think is horrible. Jesus comes up to him, follow me, and he says, okay. He just walks away from it. He gets up and he walks away. Wow. And he takes him, this is a glimpse, we get a little glimpse of Jesus at home, because we have to assume that Jesus takes him to his home. We don't get to see that very often. You don't talk about this very often. Jesus takes him to his home. Did you know he had a home? He takes him and he sits him down at this table to eat with his disciples. In the first century, it's all open. It's a small village like that. You can't, everybody's up in everybody's business. They can see everything. There's Gladys's everywhere. And that's what Mia calls me when I look out the window. So we got Gladys's everywhere, because it's just all open. So there's no hiding it. There's just no hiding it, right? He's sitting there eating. He's got his disciples. Now Matthew, the tax collector, is a disciple. Oh my gosh, what the heck? And then he's not just got his disciples following him, and they're questionable enough. The disciples are, fishermen, lower, nobodies. He's got this group, this ragtag group sitting around, and he's got more tax collectors and sinners. We just broadly call them sinners in the Gospel of Matthew. The Pharisees notice it, right? The Pharisees are faithful, good, religious people. They are part of the religious system. They are part of the synagogue. They are part of the church at the time. They are good, righteous people. They follow the rules. They maintain the law of Torah. And they notice this, and it really bugs them. It really bugs them. Why? They don't even go to Jesus at this point. They just go to his disciples. You know how that works. You don't want to go directly to the source because you might get lambasted, or maybe you'll hear something you don't want to hear. So they just go over here like, why? Why is he doing that? That little whispery thing. Why is he doing that? But Jesus hears them. I love this story. I love this story because it's just this affirmation and confirmation of the thing that we know to be true and that we proclaim. We proclaim it. This is what we say we want to be. This is the way we say we want to live, that we believe that God is a God of love, and that this good news is for everyone, and that we should break apart and break open the systems of power that would oppress, the worldly systems, and that what it is about following God is to really, truly live in this openness of love and acceptance, and sitting at the table with the hardest people to sit at the table with, right? All the outcasts and the people that society says are, and you know who they are in our world, right? I mean, the tax collectors and sinners is just another way of saying, you know, people of color or LGBT, people who are gay or trans, especially now. The trans people are really, our trans sisters and brothers are taking so much abuse in this world. And so many of us are closing our ears and our hearts. We're just going, well, what can we do? But not Jesus. Nope. Jesus goes right up to him and says, why don't you come home and eat with me? Come follow me. He just calls these people that the world constantly, like as society, we constantly say, these are just not okay people. We don't even know if we want them in our churches. We don't even know if we should talk to them. But not Jesus. Jesus never does that. Why are we saying that and proclaiming that we follow Jesus when we're ignoring the simple truth so often that he calls the most absurd people as disciples? He calls the most inadequate. He doesn't call the righteous. So righteous, I know. I'm good and righteous, and I know all about God, and I can tell you all. No, he doesn't call them. It's always the most unlikely. It's Matthew, the tax collector, sitting in his little toll booth. He doesn't even say to him, well, first, you know, we got to get you changed. He doesn't say that. Jesus doesn't say to Matthew, follow me after you've gotten your life straightened out and you realize what you've done wrong and how you should be living, and then you can come and you can follow me and be my disciple. No. Nope. He says, follow me now. Right here, right now, let's go. Matthew says, yes, indeed. Wow. That's pretty impressive. Now, then there's this little story. We get this little story, right? That we get the leader of the synagogue then shows up. The leader of the synagogue. Now, you can go home and read this for yourself. Just look at it again. The leader of the synagogue now comes and kneels down. First century, the leader of the synagogue would not be kneeling to Jesus. That's huge. This person who is righteous, who is a leader, who has esteem and is known throughout, comes and humbles themselves before Jesus, kneels down and says, please, my daughter has died, and I know that if you come. So Jesus didn't go out looking for the leader. The leader now comes looking for Jesus, humbles himself. Please. First century, in the first century at this time, it was not uncommon for young teens, young people to die. It would be uncommon to live beyond 30. If you were 30, you were a grandparent and probably very ill and very old looking. Like 30 would have been really old. Just think about that. 30 would have been considered really old. So it wasn't unusual for a young person to die, sadly, in this society. But man, this guy, he comes and he kneels down and he says, please. Jesus follows. Do you see how that works? Jesus says, Matthew, follow me. Yes. And now here comes the leader of the synagogue. Please follow me and help me. That's pretty amazing. Then the woman, this outcast woman, because a woman who is hemorrhaging, bleeding for as long as this woman has been bleeding, she is not a part of society. She's unclean. It's first century rules. She's unclean. She would have been cast out. She would have been really in bad shape. She's probably used up every ounce of resource that would have been available to her. She's desperate, and she just thinks to herself, if I could just, it's not unusual in first century to believe that if you touch a garment of a teacher, a really highly regarded teacher, a rabbi, that it might have healing qualities. So she thinks, I'll just touch his garment. He won't even know. It won't even, just touch it, and boom, he sees her. He does know. He feels that touch. Just by that. He calls her daughter. When he calls her daughter, what does that mean? It means he says, you're in my family now. You're in my family now. You're part. You now belong. Isn't that something? Isn't that something that Jesus in his ministry, and as he calls his disciples and he lives out this ministry of his that is about what he says in his own words, the kingdom of God here and now, that at every step of the way we see how he reaches out, how he sees, how he brings reconciliation, he includes, he lives in a way that brings in the most unlikely people, the people that society has decided belong or don't belong. Why can't we do that better? Why do we live in a world still where the money flows up, where the rich get richer, where we worship people who build and make big, great things? King Herod was known as a great builder, by the way. Oh, so impressive, big, opulent building. Why do we worship that? Why we claim Christianity and we turn a blind eye to the suffering of our sisters and brothers? We're called. We are called. Jesus is saying, follow me. It's really clear, follow me. And the answer, we have to decide. There's no and, maybe, later, I'm busy, let me get this done first, let me see about this first, it's not a good time for me right now, once things settle down, I'll jump back in. It's not one of the options. Jesus says, follow me. And we have to say yes or no. Yes, I will follow, and I'm going to go right now. Or, I'm going to sit in my toll booth and keep collecting taxes. We are being called. God is speaking. Jesus is calling. God is speaking. God has never stopped speaking. We often talk about how we have to listen and see if God is, but no, God is always speaking. God is still speaking. God speaks and calls us all the time. Will you answer with yes? Can we answer with yes? Are we ready to really, truly create the space where the tax collectors and sinners can eat together with us? Are we really ready? I pray that we are.